Right, time for me to do the shading on my Emperor's Sons. So, following kind of issue number 25 of Combat Patrol, which means I've got two shading paints now to use on my Emperor's Sons Space Marines, Nuln Oil and Carroburg Crimson. Now, this means that basically what I need to do is I need to apply the Carroburg Crimson to the purple half and the Nuln Oil to the cream half. However, because I don't want it to be too thick, which I find with Nuln Oil, it's one of the issues that it's a very thick paint. I'm going to water it down a bit so that it flows a bit more, and that'll allow it to be, not quite as dirty when I'm done. So if I show you an example of one I've done so far, you can see I've put the Carroburg Crimson on at the normal consistency, whereas the actual Nuln Oil, I've really watered it down and it's flowed a bit more. Now, it's still dirty and it's still got streaks to it, but it's not as bad as it could be. Now, I've got a lot of Space Marines to do, so I'm going to do a couple of examples. So I'm going to do what I'm going to do on this, and then I'll show similar effects on this, my Terminator. I'm going to pop up my chaplain and show you what I'm doing on that. Overall, however, because there's an awful lot to get done, I'm not going to show you every single model, just to give you an idea of what we need to do. So, as you can see, Carroburg Crimson, if you're wondering why mine is in a dropper bottle and not in the normal tub, it's because I transferred it across, because I find that so much easier. Okay, so dead simple. I'm just starting at the top of the model and I'm heading downwards and trying to push it into all of the recesses. Now, one decision that I did make is that actually I personally think the gold looks really good in this crimson. So wherever I've got gold, I'm actually going to use that to shade the gold. I just think it gives a slightly different effect than if I were to use the Nuln Oil. I always end up calling it Nuln Oil, and I think it's just weird way that I read things sometimes, unfortunately. Now, I'm trying to be very careful not to get the... I need to zoom out of it here, to be quite honest. Yeah, to not get any of the silver work, any of the brown, like the leather work, because that's just not going to work, unfortunately. Basically, if I hit the silver with this crimson, it's going to turn it into a very strange pink colour. There's no other way to put it. I made that mistake a little bit earlier on one of my test runs, and I can assure you it doesn't work to my mind. Kind of hoping that you're seeing what I'm doing, because the problem is I'm kind of painting dark on dark here. Oh, no, don't you dare go on to the wrong part. If you make a mistake, just try and get it cleaned up instantly. Now, sometimes when you're doing shading, you might not want to do the whole surface. You might want to just do kind of recesses, and that's perfectly fine if you want to take it down that way. But what I'm doing with mine is I'm actually I want to really take the purple into a very dark shade, so that later on, when I do highlighting, it'll really stand out very nicely. So that's as simple as it is to do the Carroburg Crimson. I'll just give that a chance to dry up a bit while I start on this Terminator Lord. Terminator Captain, sure. There's a lot more gold work to do on this guy. But anywhere that I've got gold, I'm applying this. I don't know if it's what's going on, but everything feels very dark at the moment. Turn up my lighting a bit, see if that helps. Quite a few difficult little recesses to get into on this, guys, you might guess. And there's some choices that you could make as well, even at this stage, about colouring and where you want to go with it. So just try this. So as I said, I think it's actually a nice effect with the gold to add this. It kind of pushes it towards a rose gold, which is definitely a colour I would prefer on this. But I'm trying to make sure that I only get the gold and I don't get the silver work. Because as I said, I personally find that when I did it before while I was painting a different one, I got some of this on the silver and it just didn't feel right to my mind. But I think that it creates a slight tint of rose gold over gold, so I kind of like it over the gold. Now, of course, what I don't want to do by accident is get any of this on the cream either. Well, making sure that I'm always pointing the miniature at the camera so you can see what I'm doing. Because if you're doing one part of the gold in this, then you've got to do all the parts of the gold in this for continuity. So I just think it's got a very, when it goes down on the gold, it just takes the gold into a slightly pinkish colour, purpley pink colour, and as I said, that kind of reminds me of rose gold. Not fully rose gold, because rose gold is far pinker, but you know, I still think it's a good effect. Yeah, and as I said, I just think I like it as a colour. I think it works. That's my own personal opinion. If you don't like it, then what you would do is you would use the Nuln Oil to make your gold effect. Okay, so there's our Carroburg Crimson all nicely done. There is, of course, all your other ones that you need to do, but it's the same basic thing. You just do the purple half and all of the gold areas, and you end up with something looking like this across the model. Okay, now then, what else do we have? I'll also show you that you also kind of wanted to do it if you're following my chaplain tutorial. One thing that I was debating is where I should put the purple on this. So basically, I definitely obviously want to darken this purple here with my shader, and it works really well. Looks really good. The other thing I was thinking is, well, should I use Nuln Oil on the black, Nuln Oil on the black, or should I carry on with the purple? Now, after quite a bit of debate, I decided I wanted to see what the purple looked like on the black. So I'm just going to show you that here. I've actually put the purple over that black, and I like the effect. And what I realised is what's going to be a good idea is if I actually shade in purple on the black for the actual bike's bodywork. But what I've done is Nuln Oil the tyres, and then that creates just two different colours of black. I just feel that that kind of then changes it, you know, so it's not just all the same shade of black in those two places. And that way, when I go over the metalwork in Nuln Oil, it's going to make it look better, in my opinion. As you can see, that's how I'm going to do that whole thing. So I'm going to basically do all the bodywork shaded in this Carroburg colour. Now, the other parts that I'm going to do are things like this. So the book, which is straight from the instructions. Again, getting all the gold work. Being very careful not to hit the silver parts. Being very careful not to hit any of the leather work either, because that is not going to look right if I do. Now, again, the red. So wherever you've got the red on the handles and the red on his croziers, I'm going to do that too. And of course his actual gold parts to create that nice slight tint to the gold. You can see there's just so much to do on this guy. Just trying to get everywhere underneath all the arms now. So overly you can see how that's slowly coming along. Okay, I'm going to finish that in a little bit because I've got a lot more to do, and you know, obviously this video is already hitting 12 minutes. Right, the Nuln Oil now. What I don't want to do is I don't want this Nuln Oil to be too thick. So if you just put Nuln Oil straight down over the wraith bone, you're going to end up with quite a thick colour. So what I'm doing is I'm mixing the Nuln Oil with water to make a very runny. Now I need to still get it to just the right consistency that it flows. Now this is watered down, so you could probably imagine that if I hadn't been watering this down, how thick this would have been over the cream, which is not where I want to go really. So I've really watered this down quite a lot at this point. And because I've watered it down, you can see it's kind of flowing nicely into all the recesses without creating too many streaks on the wraithbone colour. Now, I'm not going to do it in this video, but in future videos when we go over and do re-highlighting or relayering and highlighting, you're going to see how this kind of gets all tidied up. I'm also going over the weapons, anywhere where there's silver work, and getting that done as well. Going over any leather work with it, just to get it done. Like so. That's how simple this part is, by the way. I mean, that's how like straight up I'm doing it. Now, over here on my Tyranid as well, just gonna put this Nuln Oil onto the white parts, like so. Same with this, you know, same on this guy. So again, starting from the head, moving downwards. You can do this with all the Terminators, exactly the same method. Using a very rundown, watered. Make sure you get any of those white coloured crux terminus things. Personally, I found this is also a method that worked quite well if you're doing something like Deathwing, Dark Angels, basically. As I said, I'm not going to show you relayering in this video because that's something for later on in Combat Patrol. So for now, you're going to worry potentially that your miniatures look a bit naff with the shading done this way, but we will fix it up later on, so don't worry about that. So get onto the back of this guy as well. Now, this is again where we just got to make sure we're getting any of the silver work done in this colour. Anything like the crux terminus, again, roll over it and you can see it's nicely flowing in and picking up all of the crevices. Now you may want with your silver work to actually not water down your Nuln Oil. Why do I always call it the wrong thing? But again, that's entirely your own choice. Personally, I think it works fine watered down. Like so. Okay, now again, gonna apply it to the back of the cloak in the basically because it's very shadowed. Now you'll notice that I haven't really done it on the outside of the cloak, and again that's a personal choice here. What I'm going to do for this part of the cloak is I've got some of that Carroburg, so just a little bit of my Carroburg Crimson, because what I don't want with this red is I don't want it to be overpowered by the shade. So I've really watered it down. And once you've watered it down, you can just very quickly go over it, and you can see it's still red then, but because it's really runny, it's flown into all those lovely little recesses and created a nice shade without destroying the red colour, basically, which is what I wanted to do. So there we go, that's as simple as that, really. That'll now start to pool slowly downwards, but that's how I like to do it anyway. Okay, as you might guess, I've got to kind of replicate this now across every single one of these, which is all of the Terminators, all of the Infernus Marines, finish off the Chaplain. The other little thing here is this. It's the Librarian. At this stage, because the Librarian is pretty much all blue, there's not much we can do as far as shading is concerned. However, our watered down Carroburg can go on the red here. Also works well on these yellow piping, just to give a bit of depth and tone to them. I'm also going to use my watered down Nuln Oil. Oop, knocking my camera there. To just get his metalwork. So basically any of these. His power axe. Basically where we got any cream, any of the Wraithbone colour, just run that over, just to kind of get it the right colour. Is Exterminus. Again, it's just so that we've done what we can, but of course the blue needs to be left for now because the Nuln Oil and the Carroburg Crimson doesn't really go on it, but we can pick up these purity seals with a bit of black just to get a bit of depth to them. Quite a few purity seals on this guy. Into his face to create quite deep shadows on his face. And there we go. So, you know, still got quite a lot to do, but I don't think it's worth carrying on the video any longer as you watch me just basically do the same thing over and over and over again. But that's how I've used Carroburg Crimson and Nuln Oil on my Emperor's Sons. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.